Steve. We're going to start with this defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, Oklahoma State. And I have been delving through the defensive metrics and rankings, and the work he's doing over there in Stillwater has been pretty darn good.
Yeah, I think you got to give this guy proper respect for the job he did at Oklahoma State. And in a conference not known for defense, Oklahoma State was number 3 in the country in total defense, the yards allowed. Only one team this season went over 30 points against them. That was Oklahoma, game that they won 37-33. They lost the Big 12 championship game to Baylor in a rematch, 21-16. And everybody will remember that's the game where the runner was shoved out of bounds about 3 inches shy of the pylon. So it was nothing that the Oklahoma State defense didn't do. They only gave up 21 points in that loss. He has been really known. I mean, he spent, I believe, a total of, I want to say 18 or 19 years altogether at his alma mater, Cornell, and was a player, an assistant coach, and even the head coach there, I believe, for about 6 years. So I think that's a positive in his favor that, like Kevin Wilson on offense, you have a former head coach now running your defense, and he can give Ryan Day the kind of counsel that he needs as a head coach from a former head coach to help him kind of manage through games. But that's just part of why he's coming to Ohio State. Obviously, Ohio State's defense needs a reboot of some sort going into 2022. He'll start his duties in earnest, I presume, after the Rose Bowl, but already available, I assume, to talk to prospects and touch base with people on where things are headed beginning in 2022. Also did a stint at Duke for David Cutcliffe, I believe. Defensive coordinator there, defensive coordinator for Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State, and just did a bang-up job. He's got a list of guys he helped put in the NFL, and known primarily, I believe, as a linebackers coach by trade. But I think it's premature to say whether any of the current Ohio State assistants are going to be out of a job, including Al Washington, the linebackers coach. There is some thought that perhaps Larry Johnson might retire as the defensive line coach, but I think things are a little bit up in the air whether or not Kerry Combs would be back, known as a great recruiter. Matt Barnes kind of did a bang-up job as the guy calling the defense until he didn't against Michigan. And so I guess we'll just have to wait and see what direction Ryan Day wants to take this thing in the future. If it impacts Parker Fleming, who became the full-time special teams coordinator this past year and helped out a little bit on defense, we'll have to wait and see on that as well.
I will correct Steve on one thing. He does not start. You say he starts on January 2nd. He's starting now because he is preparing for Notre Dame, which is Ohio State's first opponent next year. So he is actually, he may not be signed or anything, and he's not getting paid from Ohio State or anything like that just yet, but he is already preparing for 2022 for the Buckeyes as he scouts the Ohio State first opponent next year.
Yeah, as he's going through each of those Notre Dame tapes, I'll make a copy for them, and I'll make a copy for me. And there you go.
One for you, one for me.
Yep.
What I think you have to like is he's got over a decade of being a defensive coordinator. This is not his first rodeo. He's run a defense. He's coached coaches. He's dealt with all of that. And that's something that the Buckeyes really haven't had since maybe Greg Schiano. Not that everything went great there, but even when Ryan Day brought in Jeff Hafley, which went fantastic, like this was still a pretty new thing for him. So this is something that Jim Knowles has done for a long time. He's also bringing in a defense that won't require a lot of adjustment for the Buckeyes because it's similar to what they already do. And they have guys that can do the things that he wants to do because he has different hybrid guys in the defense that, we can get into later, but things should fit. It's not changing, completely to what Ohio State does. This is a guy that Oklahoma State led the nation in sacks, led the nation in tackles for loss this year. He likes aggression. I know every new coach, they talk about aggression and gets everybody excited. Like, well, how come no, why was this guy at Oklahoma State? Why was he only at Cornell? Why was he only at Duke? and now he was one of the hot commodities on the coaching trail this year, as Penn State was after him. I think Florida was after him, so Ohio State got him, and I think it's obviously a good thing because it's different than what is happening this year. So, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. And we'll see what happens where the rest of the chips fall with the coaches, because I'm not sure. I wonder if Ryan Day even knows. He probably has a good idea. If somebody's retiring, I'm sure he knows that. But, Jim Knowles may get in here and say, well, I like this guy better, or let's do this with this guy, because you got to give him control and see where it goes from there.
I agree. I think it's got to be his show, and guys have got to show willingness to do whatever the job is within what he wants to do. These guys are paid extremely well at Ohio State, so I think given the alternative of looking for jobs elsewhere, they'll probably fall in line. Maybe there'll be some salary retinkering. Combs was making 1.5, I believe. Not sure what Knowles is going to make coming in. I'm sure we'll get a term sheet or something at some point when that's all hammered out. But it does come down to responsibility, game planning, development, recruiting. There are so many aspects to this as assistant coaches, and to me, this guy seems like he checks a lot of these boxes. So I think that it's got to be a positive that you'll have a fresh set of eyes and some new ideas coming in to help out this defensive staff.
Oklahoma State, of course, is a quarterback wide receiver centric program, or has been under Mike Gundy until recent years. Jim Knowles shows up and his defenses just got better and better and better and better while he was there. And Oklahoma State won, most specifically this season, that close to a college football playoff appearance, possibly being given consideration had they beaten Baylor. And to your point, Steve, their quarterback, Spencer Sanders, threw 4 picks in that game, and Oklahoma State still kept Baylor continually out of the red zone, out of the end zone, and stood up against difficult circumstances in that game. So you're looking at the 7th scoring defense in the nation. Ohio State was 25th. Rush defense, number 5 in the nation. Buckeyes at number 20, not bad. And also in some of the statistics that are a little bit more telling, like yards per carry, number 5 in the nation, 2.7 yards per carry. Pass defense, top 12 in the nation, but pass per attempt, number 4 in the country. Buckeyes at number 31. Yards per play, number 4 in the country. Buckeyes at 38. Total defense, number 3. Buckeyes at number 50. And now he's going to be working with better athletes, Tony.
Absolutely. And that's the big thing for him. We were talking about this on Buckeye Weekly podcast last night, where the overall recruit ranking talent level that 24/7 does has Oklahoma State somewhere in like the 40s or something, and Ohio State is in the top 5. So you're talking about a really considerable jump in talent. I think Oklahoma State was also the only defense in the nation to not give up more than 3 offensive touchdowns in a game. Georgia was the last one, and Alabama scored more than 3 or scored 3, something to that effect, where they held their opponents below, something that nobody else did. So that's another good sign. But yeah, like, he's not known as a recruiter, but he's worked at Oklahoma State and Duke. So I don't know how many guys that work at Oklahoma State and Duke or Cornell are known as recruiters. Once you get to Ohio State, it'll be interesting to see what he does. And this is going to be his baby. This is his defense. You talk to or you watch videos of him, and this is pretty much all the access we're getting right now from Jim Knowles, because obviously we don't cover him, but you watch videos from Oklahoma State and players really like him. They talk highly of him. You see his interaction with his players. So it would make sense that he would be able to build relationships with high school kids and be able to recruit them. You'll start to hear some stuff from current Ohio State commits about what they think of him, but I don't know. I doubt there's going to be any interaction until after January, after he's there. But the amount of talent that he's going to now inherit and work with, because he does have hybrid players that I've talked about, and he's got one of the hybrid players he calls it a Leo or a Jack, which is could be a rush end that also plays some linebacker. But in watching videos, he says that it doesn't have to be a defensive end. It doesn't have to be a defense. I mean, he said at Duke, he had a guy play the position who was 5'8" or 5'9", and it's just a guy that is an adjuster, as he said. And it's a lot like a running back where you can just put him in the middle of the field and just send him after the ball and things like that, where a lot of these hybrids are off to the field side. It's a linebacker or defensive back hybrid. His hybrid, he just will put in the middle of the field at times and just send him loose. And you look at what Ohio State's doing in recruiting, including one player we're going to talk about here in a bit, and they are moving more towards these hybrid guys where you've got they're either big safeties or fast linebackers. And then, and now you put them where you need them, and they've got athletic defensive ends, and he'll be able to work with those guys. So I'm excited to see what happens. I don't know how much we'll actually learn in the spring, as they're probably just trying some basic installs, and he's still trying to figure out exactly what he has. And spring will be the first real good opportunity to see. And then how does that evolve in fall camp and into the season?
I can throw in here. Somebody on our message board said, why is the defense so bad when they've recruited so well? And I said, well, that's a little bit of a misnomer. And I started to crunch some numbers. The guy was like, you got 4 and 5 stars everywhere. And I found out that's not necessarily the case. They have recruited a few 5 stars in the last 5 years. It's a total of 6, 7, 8, 9 5 stars in the last 5 years on defense, but only 4 of those were on the roster this year. And that's Teron Vincent, who really has never played up to a 5-star level, not even close. Zach Harrison, who has in about 3 or 4 of the games he's played in the last 2 years. And then JT Tuamalaau and Jack Sawyer last year, who were freshmen who started to scratch the surface of what they can do. So 4 or 5 stars there. No one who you'd say is an All-American. And obviously the 2 freshmen, they're still finding their way. And then 34-star players on defense were on the roster this year. 17 of them, though, were in their first or second year. So they have upgraded the number of good players that they have taken in the last 2 years, I think. But as I summed it all up, there's not a lot of All-American blue chip, high blue chip, top 20, top 30 talent on this team on defense that changes games, like a Chase Young or a Jeffrey Okudah. Those type guys who were, top 20 players and played to that ranking. Nobody like that on this roster. And then, as I said, made the comment, and I'll just leave it at this, a lot of okay to good players, but not a lot of great. So they got to get back to getting great on that defensive side of the football if they expect the results to look much different.
Well, from what you just outlined there, Steve, it seems to be a combo issue of development and recruiting, where the recruiting could have been better on the defensive side to match the offense. But when you're pulling in top 5 classes, they can't be all one-sided.
Yeah. And I'll just throw in there, as I looked at those lists, I see a lot of guys who were high 4 stars from, let's say, what would have been the 2020 recruiting class. And we didn't see many of them on the field this year, like Darian Henry. There were 3 or 4 of them that just stuck out like a sore thumb. Like, well, where are you, bro? Second year, you should be in the 2 deep, and you should be getting reps. And I think that goes back to development. I know 2020 was a wonky year. Those guys didn't get the proper development, perhaps, that they should have with that time that was missed. But hey, they're in the same boat as everybody else. I will say this, at other colleges, it seemed like you were going up against more and more super senior type guys than even Ohio State had. Ohio State had 5 of them, but it seemed like there were a lot of other schools that took more and more advantage of that. And, Ohio State lost 2 games. Did Oregon and Michigan have guys that really, really took advantage of it to where it changed the trajectory of Ohio State's season? I don't know, but I don't know. Just you have a great offense, and you've had a great offense for the last several years, but something has always held you back from being at the top of the line. And I think that Ryan Day has finally said enough is enough, and gone out and tried to do something to address that.
In that 2020 class that you cite, 25 signees and 7 of the top 8 offensive players.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's
Offensive
been a
minded
criticism of Day.